Hello, my name is Miss Jones. I teach elementary school math, and welcome to my channel, Miss Math Jones. Today we're going to be working on our third grade Eureka Module 6, Lesson 8 homework. Let's get started. Our objective for this homework is to solve 1- and 2-step problems involving graphs. Just a reminder before we start, make sure you try to complete your homework on your own. Then watch the video to check your work. Now, let's get started with number 1. Number 1 says Maria counts the coins in her piggy bank and records the results in the tally chart below. Use the tally marks to find the total number of each coin. So, as always, when you get a graph, you want to analyze it. That means you want to look at it and see what information that you have and what information that you might need to include in that graph to make it make sense. All right, so I see the title. The title says coins in Maria's piggy bank, which means this graph is about the coins in her piggy bank, right? Well, what coins? Now I look on the side and I see that my categories are the things that I'm going to be talking about are pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters. I also see tally marks. What I don't see is the number of coins. That means that I have to fill in the number of coins. Those tally marks represent the number of coins. So I'm going to have to use those tally marks to figure it out. Now, we've discussed this in class. When you see tally marks in groups of 4 with a line across, then that's the same thing as saying 5. So basically, you're counting by 5. Once you run out of those bundles, then the single lines are counted as 1. So again, hopefully you completed this chart before you watched the video. Now, as far as pennies, what number did you get for pennies? What was the number of pennies that you counted using those tally marks? If you said 68, you're absolutely correct. What about nickels? How many nickels did you determine those tally marks were showing you? Good. If you said 62, you're on the mark. Going on to dimes. How many dimes did you figure was there according to those tally marks? Perfection, 57. I know that's the answer that you got. And moving on to quarters. How many quarters did you determine that she had in that piggy bank according to those tally marks? 24. Perfect. Okay, now I've completed my tally chart. I have my number of coins for each type of coin. And now I can move on to the next section. So here we have letter A that says use the frequency column of the table to complete the bar graph below. The scale is given. Now remember, the scale helps you to figure what you're counting by. It tells you how much each square unit or each square is worth. If I look at the left side of my graph, it goes from 0 to 10, which means I'm counting by tens. Now, we have to fill in the rest of the numbers so that we can shade in our bars for our bar graph for each category of coin. All right, so if I'm counting by tens, what number comes after 10? That's right, 20. So let's go ahead and continue to fill it in until we've gone all the way to the tippy top. All right, so I have 20. Next would be 30, then 40, then 50, then 60, then 70, then 80. All right, so I have it filled in. Now I can go ahead and shade in my bars for my bar graph. Now you'll notice that we're counting by tens, but none of the number of coins are multiples of 10, which means we're going to have to estimate about where those bars should be. Now the most important thing to remember here is as long as you're between the correct tens, then your bars are actually a realistic estimate. So this is what I mean. For pennies, right? there were 68 pennies. Well, it will be hard to shade exactly 68 according to the scale that we have. But as long as you're between 60 and 70, closer to 70, then it's a realistic estimate for your bar. So for pennies, I'm going to shade all the way up close to 70, right? Without actually touching it. And that's realistic because 68 should be about there. Now we're going to do the same thing for nickels. All right. Nickels, the total nickels was 62. So the bar for 62 should stop somewhere between 60 and 70, right? But it should be shorter than the 68 bar for pennies. See that? Now, are these bars that you're shading in going to be exact? No, they're estimates, okay? As long as they're realistic, then we're okay. Now for dimes, we have 57. So that means that your bar should be somewhere between 50 and 60. Again, realistic, okay? The 57 bar shouldn't be shaded up to 20. That doesn't make sense. All right, and moving on to quarters, it's 24. So it should be somewhere between 24 and 30. Now, does your bar graph have to look exactly like mine? No. Should it be similar? Yes, okay? We don't have a way of shading exactly 68, of shading exactly 62, of shading exactly 57, of shading exactly 24, but we can estimate. We can make sure that it's as realistic, right, as possible. Close. Now, if you need to pause your video to make sure that your bar graph looks similar to mine, go ahead and do so now. Now we're moving on to B. B is a word problem. B says, how many more? As soon as I see those three words together, how many more? I'm going to underline it if it's on paper. If it's on a computer, I'm just going to write the word subtract on my paper because how many more? Those three words together, that is a mathematical key phrase, okay? That's a key phrase that means I need to subtract, and I need to be on the lookout for what I'm supposed to be subtracting. Now, I'm going to reread. How many more pennies are there than dimes? Which means I'm comparing pennies to dimes. So I go up and I look at my frequency chart that I've actually filled in, and I see that my number for pennies is 68 and my number for dimes is 57. So when I write this on my paper, I'm going to make a note to myself. So I'm going to write pennies 68, 68, 68, and I'm going to subtract dimes, which is 57. All right, now, do I need to borrow? No, because if I hold up 8 fingers, if I start in the ones place, if I hold up 8 fingers and I take away 7 fingers, I have a finger left, which means I can do that. There's no borrowing that needs to be done here. So I'm just straight up subtracting. 8 minus 7 is what? Right, 1. And 6 minus 5 is, correct, 1 also, which means that there are 11 more pennies than dimes. Moving on to C. C says Maria donates 10 of each type of coin to a charity. How many total coins does she have left? Show your work. Okay, now let's read that a little bit at a time. Maria donates 10 of each type of coin to charity. So I'm going to write a note to myself. That means that she's donating 10 pennies, 10 nickels, 10 dimes, and 10 quarters to charity. And if I count by tens, that means that she's donating 10, 20, 30, 40. She's donating 40 coins to charity. All right. Now, I've written my notes for that sentence and I figured out how many coins she's donated, but that's only the first sentence. Now I can read my second sentence to figure it out. It says, how many total coins does she have left? Well, I need to know how many coins she started with first. So I have to add all of my coins. 68 plus 62 plus 57 plus 24. So I'm going to add my first two numbers, 68 plus 62. So I have 68 pennies. And again, I like writing it out, 68 pennies, because I need to write down what I'm doing. Okay, I need to write it out so I can see it. You need to write it out so you can see it. So 68 pennies plus 62 nickels. Again, write it out. And I add, starting with my ones place. What's 8 plus 2? Good. It's 10. I write my 0 there and I carry my 1. What's 6 plus 6? Perfect. 12. Then I add one more, which is 13. And I just write my 13 down. Okay, so pennies plus nickels is 130. But I still have to add in dimes and quarters. So I'll go ahead and add my dimes to the number that I already have there. So I'm going to add my 57 dimes to my answer that I have so far. Starting with my ones place as always, what's 0 plus 7? Right, it's 7. And 3 plus 5, good. That's 8. And 1 plus 0 is 1. Perfect. Now, I have one more coin type to add, which is quarters. And I have 24 quarters. So I'm going to go ahead and add those 24 quarters to my answer of 187. Once I add my quarters in, I'll have added all 4 types of coins together to get the total coins that you started with, okay? So what's 7 plus 4? That's right, it's 11. So I write my 1 in my ones place, then I carry a 1 over the tens place. Now, what's 8 plus 2? Good, that's 10 plus 1 more. Good, that's 11. So I write a 1 there in my tens place, and then I carry the other 1 over the hundreds place. Now, what's 1 plus 1? Perfect, it's 2. So that means that she had a total of 211 coins. All right, so she started with 211 coins. And I need to know how much she had left after she donated the 40 to charity. So I'm going to subtract 211 minus 40. Now, I need to see if I need to regroup my ones place. Hold up one finger. Take away 0 fingers. Yeah, I don't need to regroup. 1 minus 0 is 1. But when I get to my tens place, I can't do that. If I hold up one finger and try to take away 4 fingers, I can't, which means I need to borrow. Okay, so I'll go over to the hundreds place, and that 2 is going to become a 1. And the 1 in the tens place is going to become a 11. Now I can subtract. What's 11 minus 4? That's right, it's 7. And 1 minus 0, good, 1. So that means that she has 171 coins left. Now, if you need to pause your video to make sure that your work matches mine, go ahead and do so now. Moving on to number 2. Number 2 says, Miss Holloman's class goes on a field trip to the planetarium with Mr. Fiore's class. The number of students in each class is shown in the picture graphs below. All right, so on one side, you have the students in Miss Holloman's class, and on the other side, you have students in Mr. Flores' class. So let's start with Miss Holloman's class. Now, this is a picture graph. Anytime you have a picture graph, you always look for the key first because I need to know what those pictures mean, okay? What number are they equal to? What unit am I counting by? All right, so when I take a look at the key, I notice that each square is 2 students, which means those are units of 2. We're counting by 2. So I'm going to start with the boys, and I'm going to count by 2. Now, I wrote my numbers inside of my squares just so I can keep count. So I'm going to start with the boys and count by 2. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and that's a half of a square. What's half of 2? That's right, 1. So my next number is going to be 13. So there are 13 boys in Miss Holloman's class. Now I'm going to do the same for girls, okay? And I'm going to write my numbers inside of the square as I count by 2s. Let's go ahead and get started. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, and that half of a square is 1, so that would be 17. There are 17 girls in Miss Holloman's class. Now, I figured out how many boys are in Miss Holloman's class and how many girls are in Miss Holloman's class. Now I need to move over to the students in Mr. Flores' class. That's Fiore's. I've been saying Flores the whole time. Fiore's. Okay. Again, when you're reading word problems, don't get hung up on the names. I do understand that you want to pronounce everything correctly, but when you're reading it in your head during a test, nobody hears the name but you. Just make sure everything else is pronounced correctly, and you make sure you keep your eye out for those key math phrases and words that shows you what type of operation to perform. Back to figuring out Mr. Fiore's class. Okay, so for boys, let's start with boys. And I want to make sure to look at the key again because sometimes keys change, but this one didn't. We're still counting by 2s. All right, so let's start with the boys, and we're counting by 2s. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. There are 14 boys in Mr. Fiore's class. All right, now let's count the girls. Counting by 2s again. Write those multiples in those squares. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, and that's a half. So it would be 15. 15 girls in Mr. Fiore's class. All right, so I figured out what both classes, as far as their numbers are for their boys and their girls, okay? Now I can answer my questions. So let's look at A. A says, how many fewer? And I'm going to stop. How many fewer? That's one of those key math phrases. As soon as I see that, I'm going to write down the word subtract. And now I'm on the lookout for what am I subtracting, all right? So I'm going to start over reading because I wrote down my keyword, and now I need to reread to make sure I understand everything that I'm supposed to do. So how many fewer, subtract, boys are on the trip than girls? So that means I'm comparing boys to girls. But, I have 2 sets of boys and 2 sets of girls. Now, it didn't say boys in only Miss Holloman's class to girls only in Miss Holloman's class. All right, it said boys and girls. So I have to combine the boys and the girls to figure out the total boys and the total girls. Okay? So let's get started. So let's start off with total boys. So I'm going to add the boys from Mr. Fiore's class, which is 14, plus the boys from Miss Holman's class, which is 13. So I need to figure out how many total boys went on this field trip. Now I start with my ones place. What's 4 plus 3? That's right, 7. And 1 plus 1? Perfect, it's 2. So that means I have 27 total boys that went on this field trip. Now let's figure out how many total girls went on the field trip. So in Miss Holman's class, there were 17 girls. And in Mr. Fiore's class, there were 15 girls. All right. And when I do anything, I start with ones place. So what's 7 plus 5? That's right, it's 12. So I put my 2 in my ones place, carry my 1 over my tens place, and 1 plus 1 is 3. That's right, 32. Perfect. Now, I know the total number of boys. I know the total number of girls. Now I can finally subtract boys and girls to figure out how many fewer boys were there than girls. So, biggest number goes on top, which is girls. So, I write down 32 minus 27. All right, now I need to figure out if I need to borrow. So I hold up 2 fingers. I cannot subtract 7, so I have to borrow. Go over to my tens place. I cross out that 3. It's going to become a 2. Circle it. Then I go back over to my ones place. I borrow 10, and 10 plus 2 is 12. Now I can subtract. What's 12 minus 7? 5. And 2 minus 2 is 0. So the answer to my question is there are 5 fewer boys than girls. Now, if you need to pause your video to check your work against my screen, go ahead and do so now. Moving on to letter B. Letter B says it costs $2 for each student to attend the field trip. How much money does it cost for all students to attend? Well, I know how many total boys I have. I know the total number of girls I have, but I don't know the total number of students. Well, I can put together boys and girls to get the total number of students. Let's do that. All right. So I have 27 boys, right? Plus 32 girls. Okay. And I need to add. What's 7 plus 2? That's right, it's 9. And 2 plus 3? Good, 5. So there are 59 total students. 59 students. Now, it says that it costs $2 for each student to attend the field trip. So that means that I need to multiply 59 times 2, because that would be $2 for each of my 59 students. You could have also figured that out with a get chart. All right, so I start with my ones place. What's 2 times 9? That's right, 18. So I write my 8 here, carry my 1. What's 2 times 5? 10. I'm going to write down my 10. But then I have that 1 floating over the tens place, which means I need to add 10. So I have 108 plus 10. Okay, starting with the ones place, what's 8 plus 0? That's right, 8. And 0 plus 1? Good, that's 1. And 1 plus 0 is 1. Perfection. So that means that it costs $118 for 59 total students to attend the field trip. Now, if you need to pause your video to make sure that your math matches mine, go ahead and do so now. Finally, letter C says, the cafeteria in the planetarium has 9 tables with 8 seats at each table. Sounds like a Get chart to me. So, 9 seats with 8 seats at each table. From my knowledge of Get charts, I know that if I have my groups and my each, I need a total. And that is a multiplication problem. So, what's 9 times 8? If you said 72, you are correct. So, now I know that I have 72 total seats. And I know from my last question, question B, that I have 59 students. And it says, counting students and teachers, how many empty seats should there be when the 2 classes eat lunch? Well, I have my 59 students. I'm going to take off my teachers at the end. So 72 seats minus 59 students, all right? Well, let's start with my ones place and see if I'm going to have to borrow. Hold up 2 fingers. Can you take away 9? No. So we're going to have to regroup. Go to my tens place. That means that my 7 is going to now become a 6. And since I gave my ones place a whole 10, that's 10 plus 2. And that 2 is going to become a 12. Now I can subtract. What's 12 minus 9? That's right. It's 3. And 6 minus 5? Perfect. It's 1. So that means right now there are 13 seats left. But remember, you have those 2 teachers. So what's 13 minus 2? That's right. 11. So the 59 students plus the 2 teachers, once they get seated, there will be 11 seats left. Now, if you need to pause your video to make sure that you have everything, do so now. Congratulations. Module 6, Lesson 8 homework is complete. I hope you tried to complete it on your own before checking your work using the video. And as always, I hope this video has helped you in some way to understand Lesson 8 a little bit better and to complete your homework or check your homework. Now, as always with math, please make sure to work out those problems at least 3 times just to check your work. And I hope you have a great rest of your evening or day whenever you're watching this movie. Video, not a movie. Just wanted to see who was going to catch that in class. But make sure your math is always mathing. And this is Miss Jones saying bye until next time.